San Francisco defines a region. Who leads it influences public policy that impacts millions of people in the Bay Area. This year, a close race. Leading the pack, the incumbent.
San Francisco has one of the lowest violent crime rates in the country.
The businessman.
We need to bring our economy back downtown.
The nonprofit executive.
We need a city hall that loves its citizens.
The supervisor.
I am the only candidate in this race who has a plan.
All wanting your vote for mayor of San Francisco. But who will lead this city going forward? How will they change public opinion of the city? What will they do to fight crime and curb drug use? When will downtown recover from the pandemic? Where will they take the city in the future? We are getting answers. We've brought together a panel of San Francisco journalists to ask the tough questions on your mind. Podcaster and author Kara Swisher.
You've been here 6 years. What's your best argument why you deserve more time?
San Francisco Standard political reporter Annie Gauss.
What exactly in your background has prepared you for a job that is, I think it's fair to say, an order of magnitude more complicated than what you've done in the past?
But you would just take that risk.
And me, ABC7 News anchor Reggie Aki.
I think people would probably argue that it has taken already too long to recover.
ABC7 News and the San Francisco Standard present an in-depth conversation with the leading candidates for mayor. Mayor London Breed was elected in a special election in 2018 following the death of former Mayor Ed Lee. She is now running for her second full term.
You've been here 6 years. What's your best argument why you deserve more time, and what do you regret not having done?
Well, I'm glad to be here to answer the questions, to provide a lot of the facts about what's actually happening in San Francisco. In fact, crime is lower than it's been in a decade. And one of the great things we have now that we didn't have before was 21st century technology. Never in the history of our police department were we able to use drones and cameras and other equipment, which has led to a remarkable change around crime. And more importantly, we have a district attorney, Brooke Jenkins, who I actually appointed, and we're all working together to help combat those issues, which is why we're continuing to see crime decline. But I do understand that if people don't feel safe, we of course have so much more work to do. And I also want to make it very clear, we are well on our way. And when I say well on our way, many larceny thefts overall are down, especially car break-ins. Just in June and July alone are down over 70% and 50% overall year to date this year. We're excited about the new numbers, the new data, but again, unless you feel it, we of course still have work to do, and I acknowledge that. And more importantly, as a major city, we know that crime will happen. But here's the biggest difference. When a crime is committed in the city, there is an arrest made after an investigation. Sometimes officers are right on the spot, and the technology has helped us to do that. And more importantly, our district attorney, she's charging people, and that wasn't happening before.
How do you get over the idea of it, though? The vibe, I guess. I hate to say that, but it really is that idea.
There's definitely, I know a vibe, mostly because of what happened coming out of the pandemic. And we had to build our capacity to combat it. And what is great about now is we're working for it. San Francisco didn't have to work for it before, with a publicist, with advertising, and more importantly, the people who are visiting it, saying, I don't know why San Francisco gets such a bad rap. It's great here. We're having a great experience here. Dreamforce just had an incredible experience here. Bay FC, the first Bay Area Women's Soccer League in the Bay Area, is betting on San Francisco and building their training facility and their offices here. We're seeing a lot of sports events come to San Francisco, a lot more conventions, a lot more tourists, and we've had to work on that. I think what I regret not doing faster is having the tools that we had to. I mean, the bureaucracy of San Francisco is complicated and challenging to work in, and so some of the things that I had to do in order to move this forward, I had to go to the voters, I had to go to the ballot, and I regret not having a board of supervisors in some instances that would approve these kinds of things that would help us get to a place like this faster. That's one of the most frustrating things about doing this job. We have a legislative branch, we have executive branch, but we also have bureaucracy. And I am deconstructing that bureaucracy, which is why we are in such a better position and why it is finally leading to the kinds of results that San Franciscans want to see and deserve to see.
Mayor, there's no question, when people ask me who are either out of town or I'm traveling, and I know you get this, we all get this, where they say, ooh, San Francisco, is everything okay over there? And I'll say, there's no question in the past 9 months, just as a resident living here, things are better. I'm not seeing as many encampments, for example, on the streets. What I am seeing, though, and I have to be honest with them, is when I drive into work on most days, there are sex workers that are on the street on my way in. I'll get to the corner on Market Street, and there are sometimes up to 100 people just standing around, presumably not just loitering, but also probably involved in some sort of drug trade. And that night, I'll get on Muni and on occasion am just screamed at by someone who's on the platform or on the train with me. And that's not an abnormal thing, that's something that happens with frequency. And I feel like I have to be honest about that when people ask me how San Francisco is. What can we do to change that reality that is true for so many of us?
Well, I think that some of that is changing. And more importantly, we are finally, we built the capacity to, for example, address open air drug dealing. And we are working with the Drug Enforcement Agency, the U.S. Attorney's Office, our federal partners, our state partners with the California Highway Patrol and the National Guard, but not with M16 rifles on the corner, and our local law enforcement agencies. And we are making arrests of drug dealers and drug users in order to get people into treatment. That has not happened before. This coordinated effort to combat fentanyl, for example, which is one of the biggest challenges that not only San Francisco faces, but other cities around this country have had to endure this issue. And San Francisco is the only place where we have a coordinated state, federal, and local law enforcement effort to combat it, along with a number of issues that we know continue to persist. We have a lot of the capacity. It is starting to work, especially mostly in the daytime. We're still experiencing some challenges in the evening time. We're making people on the streets uncomfortable so that the only option is to accept what we are offering in order to get them the help and the treatment that they need.
Do you have the officers to do that?
Right now, we are understaffed with the San Francisco Police Department. But I will say the good news is, I have good news because, again, while my opponents are saying that this is all it takes or this is what needs to be done, it is so much more complicated than that. The reason why the Police Officers Association only endorsed my candidacy for mayor is because I have worked to provide them with the tools and to change the department in a way so that they can focus on doing their jobs. We are seeing bigger classes, including one that is almost at a capacity that exists now. The next one will be at capacity next month when we announce that class. And we are finally seeing people from other law enforcement jurisdictions transferred to San Francisco. That wasn't happening before, but it took a lot of removing barriers, adding opportunities to ensure that our officers have the equipment, the support, and what they need to be successful at their jobs, which is why San Francisco has one of the lowest violent crime rates in the country and has one of the lowest crime rates we've seen in over a decade. It is trending in the right direction. There's definitely more that needs to be done, but in the next 2.5 years, based on my plan, we plan to be fully staffed in the department, which takes into account retirees and other things. The other thing we've done is alternatives to policing. Our street crisis response team for people struggling with mental illness. That's a non-law enforcement response. People who need wellness checks. We've taken that off the plate of our officers. We put out on the streets in our commercial corridors and downtown retired police officers who are ambassadors. So we built up the infrastructure to ensure that the work that needs to be done to protect the public is happening, and officers are definitely a part of that equation.
Mayor Breed, one of the things that we hear a lot from our readers is San Francisco has a budget that is $15 billion. It's larger than some entire states. And yet it seems to be the case that basic services don't seem to work that well all the time. The Comptroller's Office publishes an annual survey that showed that street cleaning was rated as C, overall safety as C, police service as C+, and overall government performance was rated at a C. So the question is, why, in a city like San Francisco that has the resources that we have, why is it so difficult to provide these basic services, and what are you doing to fix that?
Yeah, and I think there's a little misperception about our budget because San Francisco, unlike any other city in the entire country, is a city and a county with its own airport, with its own healthcare and hospital system, with its own port, with its own water and sewage system. Those are things that are ran independently and don't necessarily involve resources that are directed at the kinds of services that you're talking about. So when you start picking that apart, as well as set-asides and all these other things, we're talking about a budget that's closer to the $5 billion, $6 billion range. And then there's a couple of other things that go into that too. But nevertheless, what we are doing to try and combat those issues is not only making sure that we invest the right resources in the needs of our city, but that we are also holding our own workforce accountable.
We want to thank Mayor London Bree for taking the time to talk with us today.
What Daniel Lurie says he'll do for San Francisco when we return. Learn more about all the candidates for mayor of San Francisco at abc7news.com/sfmayor. Daniel Lurie is a nonprofit executive who worked in homeless services. He's running for mayor for the first time.
As your critics have said, this is not an entry-level job. And what exactly in your background has prepared you for a job that is, I think it's fair to say, an order of magnitude more complicated than what you've done in the past?
I appreciate the question, Annie. I have a long history of getting big things done for San Francisco. I've worked with every mayor since Mayor Newsom through to this one, not only starting one of the largest, most innovative poverty-fighting organizations in this country. Mayor Ed Lee in 2013 saw my ability to bring civic leaders together, business leaders together, and asked me to chair the bid to bring Super Bowl 50 here, a global sporting event. It wasn't because I was a sports guy, it was because he knew that I could deliver, and we did. We brought a global sporting event, $240 million of economic revenue. I worked with Mayors Liccardo in San Jose, Mayor Schaaf in Oakland, Mayor Lee here in San Francisco, and we created a blueprint that now we have 3 global sporting events coming here over the next 24 months. Super Bowl is coming back, World Cup is coming here, the NBA All-Star Game is coming in February to Chase Center. $1.4 billion of economic revenue. I'm the only person in this race that's also gotten housing built, shelter built. I've housed over 40,000 people since 2015. I know how to get big things done, and the key component of all of it is holding people accountable. If you want more of the same, you got 4 other people to choose from. If you want something different, if you want change in this city, I'm here for it.
I mean, I'm curious, why not just start with the Board of Supervisors or the Board of Education? Or, you know, that's kind of historically how people cut their teeth in politics here, and it would probably cost a lot less money to run a campaign for Board of Supervisors. So why go straight to mayor?
Because the city needs change, and we cannot afford another 4 more years of these City Hall insiders that I'm running against. They have experience. It's just the wrong kind of experience. I have delivered, once again, on so many different issues, whether it's housing, whether it's education and employment. Annie, I'm in this race in the truest sense for public service, not for personal profit or personal gain, but to turn around the city that I know all 3 of you love and that I love, and I know your viewers out there desperately love. And I'm running against people that have had their chance and they have not delivered. In fact, they've failed. We are now a city and residents that when we travel, and Carol, I know you travel and you back and forth, you got to defend San Francisco. It's a shame. It's a crisis on the streets. We have a behavioral health crisis. We have a property crime crisis. This mayor has been in office for 12 years. So it's not about whether or not I have City Hall experience. It's about whether or not I have the right experience, and I do have the right experience to lead this city at this moment.
Something you just said to Kara, I want to follow up on because this keeps coming up with multiple candidates, and that is this idea of defending San Francisco. I'm curious, when you are traveling and you are in that position, like we've all been, to defend San Francisco, what is it that you say?
Well, right now, I haven't traveled much over the last 12 months. I've been working on this campaign so hard in every corner of this city. But I say San Francisco will be back. There's not a question in my mind. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think that San Francisco's best days are ahead of it. I am so optimistic about our future. Every day, I'm seeing business owners, I'm seeing entrepreneurs who love this city. And actually, I was at the night market on Irving Street a couple of nights ago. And this woman came up to me. She's born and raised here. She's got a young baby. And she's like, Daniel, I was born here. I don't think I can stay here. I love this city, but the city doesn't love me back. And that hit home for me. We need a city hall that loves its citizens, that takes care of its taxpayers and its residents. And I am committed to making sure that City Hall works for the people again. My administration, every one of my department heads is going to be accountable to the people and to me. And I tell people San Francisco's coming back.
But do you have you've run a nonprofit, which is like running a business, and you have to have a business plan.
Yes.
So your business plan says, in how many years does San Francisco come back? Because if you're going to say more than 8 years, that's more than the time that you have.
Great, I appreciate it. So what I've told people is give us 18 to 24 months, and we're going to call our friends in the East Bay and then the South Bay and Marin and say, hey, come in, come shopping with us. Come out to get a meal and let's go see a show at Golden Gate Theater. And they'll say, okay, I'm coming. Right now, you tell people come in downtown, Union Square, go see a John Mulaney show. No, I'm not doing it. Give me 2 years on that. 8 years after I'm done with 2 terms. And by the way, I've made this pledge to a rabbi, a priest. I am not running for anything in Sacramento or DC. I just want to turn around the city that I love. And 8 years from now, artists, creatives, business leaders are going to be like, I got to be in San Francisco.
So you're saying 18 to 24 months? Is that what you're saying?
18 to 24 months where we get our locals saying, I want to go back into San Francisco, give me 2 terms, and everyone around the world's going to be like, San Francisco's back.
Okay, we have that on tape.
Yes.
So that's sort of a trope of San Francisco, the boom and bust trope, you know, that it's going to, and I don't think coming back is sort of another trope. The idea of it, when you think about what's right with San Francisco, I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, and then I have a second question. You're by far the wealthiest candidate, and that's, people think about that. Why do you think you're in a position to meet the needs and challenges of people who are struggling here, these people that aren't loved?
Well, we do have green shoots, and when I think of great parts of San Francisco, I think about our arts and our culture. I think about our parks. India Basin is a park that I'm really excited about going up in Bayview, Hunters Point. It's going to be a park that rivals Chrissy Field. And I can't wait for it to open. I was involved in that in its early days, stepped aside during the campaign to keep politics out of it, but really excited about that. I'm excited about some of our neighborhoods we're seeing coming back. North Beach is doing really well. Kara, as you brought up, I am somebody that has committed his entire career to serving community, serving San Francisco and the entire Bay Area. With Tipping Point, Super Bowl, we made the most philanthropic Super Bowl of all time. We made sure that 25% of every dollar that we raised from corporates went back into the community, $13 million. I've worked in every corner of this city, was not out beating my chest saying, look at me, for 20 years. And now when you run for office, you got to say what you're up to. But I have to tell you, I'm never going to say I can put myself in somebody's shoes, but I'm going to walk alongside people every step of the way. And if a door has been open to me in my life, I've always brought as many people through those doors as possible, whether it be through Tipping Point, whether it be through Super Bowl, whether getting housing built on Bryant Street on time and under budget, good paying union labor. I'm going to continue to do that as your mayor.
Do you think your wealth is a negative? I mean, for example, with schools, how can you, for example, as a mayor, make people feel better about putting your kids in public schools? Your kids are not in public
They
school.
go to private school. We made that decision. We have friends that have the means to send their kids to private school and chose public school. And I understand people want to ask me about that, and I respect that. You know, we have an incumbent who talks about her experience going to public schools. And all I say is, how are our public schools doing? They're not doing well. We've had such bad leadership at the school district for so long now. The dysfunction is crippling our public school system. What I've said about our public school system is every single day, from the tops of the City Hall steps, I'm going to talk about student achievement and student outcomes, focused on our students, making sure we pay our teachers on time.
Daniel Lurie, a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me, you three.
Up next, what Mark Farrell has to say about his run for City Hall. Local businessman and former supervisor Mark Farrell was interim mayor of San Francisco after the death of Mayor Ed Lee. He he is now running his first campaign.
You've been talking a lot on the campaign trail about how the city has collapsed under the 6-year leadership of Mayor London Breed. Of course, you were interim mayor right before she came into power, and that was following the death, of course, of Mayor Ed Lee. Over the past year or so, we have seen improvements. There's been a decrease in major crime. So I'm talking about violent crime on the streets of San Francisco. We've also seen a reduction of homeless encampments on the streets. We've even seen a reduction of the number of deaths from the fentanyl crisis. Of course, every life is of value and is worth something, but we have seen that slowly start to go down. So when you're talking about the life on the streets of San Francisco, collapsing under Mayor Breed's tenure, do you acknowledge that there has been some improvement, and are you just not satisfied with the speed of the improvement?
So I would say that, yes, look, we've heard the statistics rattled out of City Hall for sure. To me, what matters is how do people feel living in the city of San Francisco, in their own neighborhoods, working throughout the city, even downtown, people that visit the city of San Francisco, and they would tell you simply a very different story about how they feel around these core issues around public safety, street conditions, whether it be the homeless or the fentanyl crisis on our streets. But at the end of the day, I'm a cheerleader for San Francisco. If we're doing better, that's great. But the reality is we might have come off the bottom, but we should expect so much more in San Francisco, not only from our own city, but from our city leaders. So I don't accept the fact that San Francisco is where it should be. We need to strive for more. We've always been one of the most iconic cities in the world for so many great reasons. I'm lucky enough to be born and raised here. We're not there yet. And we're not even close. And we need a leader who's going to bring about the change to really get us back to where San Francisco needs to be.
If I can just follow up, you were on the Board of Supervisors prior to being interim mayor, and what the mayor will say is that she has faced opposition from the supervisors themselves to get her policies enacted. Do you buy that?
She might have faced opposition, but what she's lacking is leadership inside of City Hall to actually fight against that opposition and get things done. When I was on the Board of Supervisors, when I became mayor, nothing was perfect, but we had active working relationships inside of City Hall, even with people that I disagreed with 95% of the time. Because we believed that we needed to find and work on that 20th issue where we could find common ground, start to either pass legislation or laws or the budget where we would markedly improve the lives of San Francisco residents. That is not happening today. So yeah, the Board of Supervisors or people that simply don't agree with you in a legislative context might be obstructionist to your vision, but it's up to you as a leader and a city leader, and it's up to the mayor of San Francisco to be that leader to get things done. And that's not what's happening right now.
You have been marketing yourself as an agent of change at City Hall, but in the past few months there has been a steady drumbeat of questions about your ethics, and those range from question about campaign finance, questions about raising money from city contractors to steer toward a favored nonprofit. There was an allegation that you tried to speed up a permit at your home. And you have said that you always follow the law, but to a lot of people, this looks like kind of the same old story at City Hall of corruption or what appears to be unethical practices. So the question is, why should people trust your leadership and trust that you would keep their best interests in mind, the interests of the voters and not yourself and your donors?
Because it's exactly what I did when I was in office before and what I will do next year as mayor. These allegations that have come, let's be very clear, from my opponents, as I've talked about every single one of them and happy to talk through the details, we have followed our lawyers' advice from the beginning in each one of these instances. It's only 10 years later or 8 years later that all of a sudden it becomes an issue. No one raised issues back then when these things were cropping up inside of City Hall. And to me, what I believe is we need a leader in San Francisco who's going to really turn the page on the last 6 years of ineffective leadership in San Francisco and really write a different chapter for our city. I believe I am that leader, and we can make a real difference in San Franciscans' lives. And at the end of the day, it's a distraction that my opponents are continue to try and raise on the campaign trail. It's not working, but they're going to continue to raise it to make sure we avoid really talking about the experience and the competence and the vision around the issues that truly matter to San Francisco residents.
So at the same time, I think you're seen as the business-friendly candidate here, more business-friendly. And it comes to reviving downtown, for example. You suggested tax breaks for businesses that require their employees to work on site, as something, say, Amazon is doing in Seattle, and some other businesses here are doing that after the pandemic. But more than a third of San Francisco offices are empty, close to half in SoMa, which used to be active and thriving during the dot-com boom. How do you actually put that into effect, though, and enforce it? It seems like an oversight nightmare. And also a kind of a gimme to big business, which has happened before in San Francisco at the expense of voters. So explain why it is not that, given the city's weak performance on oversight, and businesses have gotten advantaged over the years in the city.
Well, let's take an honest look about where we sit as a city of San Francisco. You've seen the statistics, as have I. San Francisco, post-COVID, ranks dead last in the entire United States in economic recovery. Downtown, for those of us who've been around San Francisco for a long time, is a shell of its former self. It's a ghost town compared to what it used to be. And in my view, City Hall needs to be focused on doing everything possible proactively to bring that back, because that is the economic engine. You think about downtown, south of Market, that really drives the rest of San Francisco, that really feeds the budget insert in terms of City Hall, where we fund other services that we want to fund out of our city government. So it's truly important. I believe we need to bring back public safety and clean streets. Those are table stakes from my point of view to bring economic recovery in a sustainable way. But then I also do believe we need to use tax incentives out of City Hall to bring employers and employees back to the downtown and south of Market cores. Look, I think there needs to be one tax incentives for employers that will actually relocate to those areas. And then the one that I mentioned as well that you've alluded to is if employers will actually bring their employees back into the office 4+ days a week to work, we can talk about enforcement if we want to, then they'll qualify for additional incentive. Because in my mind, tax incentives for companies are there to encourage behavior that we want out of our city government that we think will benefit all San Francisco residents. We need to bring our economy back downtown and in south of Market. We need to bring vibrancy back.
Sure, but hasn't that ship kind of sailed secularly across this country? It's not just San Francisco that suffers from it, it's every major city where commercial real estate is in a decline, and probably a decline forever, given how people work from home. Now, companies can require it, but it does take initiative from the companies. Can the city really change something, or should they just change the plan completely for what a downtown is?
Oh, I definitely think we need to think bigger and bolder in terms of a vision for downtown San Francisco. I've been talking about that for months on the campaign trail. Specifically office space, you're absolutely right. You know, we are pushing 40% commercial office vacancy in San Francisco. That is nearly double any other major US city. You know, so we need to be really, as San Francisco residents, as San Francisco voters, really alarmed about where we sit and the fact that City Hall is not engaged on this. And to me, as I think about the future of downtown, it is using tax incentives to bring employers back to the downtown south of Market core, for sure. But then it's also the long term. We have to think about the conversion from commercial to residential housing. But it's not the 10 buildings City Hall keeps talking about today. To me, we need to think bigger and bolder on so many things within our city government, certainly in this conversion topic. You think about Wall Street in the 1980s in New York, ghost town on the weekends. They've converted over 20 million square feet of office space to residential, and now, depending upon who you talk to, one of the hipper parts of New York City even on the weekends. We need to envision the same thing downtown.
Thanks again, Mark Farrell.
Thanks for having me.
How Aaron Peskin says years in City Hall make him qualified for the city's top job. Learn more about all the candidates for mayor of San Francisco at abc7news.com/sfmayor. Aaron Peskin is president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors.
Let's talk about Union Square. It has been plagued by vacancies. The vacancies are something like 22% right now, but it feels, I think, like more to people as they walk through because some of these major tenants have left the city. And you know, we know Macy's, one of the anchors of Union Square, is going to leave soon. What is it that you can do as mayor to turn things around and do it quickly?
Union Square, which is a remarkable destination. My parents took me there while I was growing up to see those the windows at Macy's during Christmas time. Has been under pressure before the pandemic with the changing nature of retail, which is part of the reason that I've worked to restructure San Francisco's business tax, which is Prop M on the ballot, which I'm proud to say I brought all 10 members of the board together with me and the mayor to fundamentally change San Francisco's business tax to give relief to small businesses and attract new ones.
Already, though, the way that it is now, and I think people would probably argue that it has taken already too long to recover. That, you know, we have tourists who are going to Union Square and staying in that area, and they don't have much to do there.
Yeah, let me say, You know, I know downtown and the greater downtown, which includes Union Square. I worked there. I've represented downtown on and off for 25 years, and it's fundamentally important to our economy, which is why I passed legislation to actually fill those vacancies with residential. And as a matter of fact, just today we announced one of those first conversions for 120 units. But we need to bring things to downtown that downtown traditionally has never had: arts and culture and entertainment and residency, and that's what we're working on.
Downtown hasn't had arts and culture?
Not in that area, no. As a matter of fact,
what about the current ACT?
Now you're moving to the theater district, but what we need to do to revitalize downtown is to bring the best aspects of neighborhoods. And I not only passed that legislation by reforming the building code and the fire code and the planning code, I have a plan. As a matter of fact, I'm the only candidate in this race who has a plan to offer city financing to bring those conversions forward with lower interest rates.
You're talking about conversions to housing.
Correct.
But is housing really what people want to visit? I mean, you can't visit housing.
In order to revitalize downtown and Union Square, we need a mix of uses. We need it to be a 24-hour neighborhood. We need to have a residential component so that it's alive in the evenings as well. Union Square actually has not been marked by a robust nightlife, and this is an opportunity to do that.
Are you giving up on retail?
No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I am the author of legislation that has worked to preserve multi-story retail. If you remember the old days, we had FAO Schwartz and multi-levels, and just a number of years ago, those were under pressure actually be converted to offices. And I actually, with the head of the planning department, passed legislation to encourage multi-story retail. But we live in a profoundly changed world, not only in San Francisco. And I think we have to have some big ideas. I think that the central part of the city, Market Street downtown, should become the headquarters of a Center for International Tech Diplomacy. It's a moonshot idea, but in the same way that New York is the International Center for Global Politics, I think that San Francisco should embrace the concept of becoming the International Center for Tech Diplomacy, bringing together academic institutions and market forces, talk about AI, develop that stuff, fill our convention center, fill those empty office spaces. That's one of the big ideas I'm bringing to this race.
That's interesting. The words tech and diplomacy don't often go together.
It's time to change that.
Good luck with that. I've been trying for many decades.
Well, let's talk about housing a little more since we mentioned that. Since May 2022, which is when the district was changed under redistricting, city data indicates that there have been 96 housing units authorized in your district, District 3, and that was the second lowest of any district in the city. So is your district doing enough to encourage the new housing that we need to make the market more affordable for people who may want to live here?
Yeah, I think we have to look at the entire city, including the district that I've had the honor of representing for much of the last 24 years. Many people don't know this, but I have actually voted to approve over 100,000 new homes in San Francisco at all income levels. A matter of fact, more than every other candidate who is running for mayor combined. And I've done that by working with neighborhoods, not against neighborhoods. And in my own district, I've built every kind of housing, affordable housing on the former freeway parcels, a homeless shelter, a transitional aged youth shelter, and market rate housing. But remember, I also represent the densest, geographically smallest district, but I've proposed plans of building hundreds of units on the Kirkland bus yard now that we're turning that from diesel buses to electric buses. And there are many opportunities to grow San Francisco, and there's a right way of going about that, and I'm pursuing that way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the same time, you have been particularly critical of the rezoning that the city is undertaking right now. You've spent some time over the past few months visiting different neighborhoods, and you know, there's been a lot of anxiety fomented about the rezoning that we have to do under the state mandate. So, you know, is that responsible? You know, would you say you want to encourage housing across the city to participate in that kind of, you know, to give people the idea that this is going to kind of destroy the character of the city?
So I don't know if your viewers know, but there are 73,000 shovel-ready, fully approved units in our pipeline that aren't being built because interest rates are too high. And my plan is for the city to offer tax-exempt bond financing, not paid for by taxpayers, revenue bond financing, in order to start building those 73,000 units. They're fully approved. They're ready to be built. We also have 60,000 vacant units in San Francisco, and I have plans to bring those on the market and give people incentives and reasons to rent those units out.
So this is really interesting because you sound so business friendly, and you're probably the candidate that is considered the least business friendly. I'd love you to talk about that a little bit. And also, during your time in city government, you gained a reputation that's pretty tough. Right now, when you came in here, you said, "Don't believe what you've heard about me," which is interesting, which is an interesting thing to say, because you've been criticized as divisive, and one poll in September found that nearly half, 44% of voters said they would never vote for you, the highest by far of any candidate in terms of unfavorables. That's not Donald Trump level unfavorables, he's at 53%. But given the history, how can you bring people together?
So first of all, I have been elected 5 times by the good people of the northeast corner of the city, in Chinatown and North Beach, everything north of Market Street. And I've worked very hard for those constituents. And I have a history of actually bringing people together to solve tough problems, which is why my colleagues have elected me twice unanimously to be president of the board, and a 3rd time recently on a mixed vote. But I have served as board president 3 times precisely because I do listen to people and I do bring people together. But there are often situations where, as a leader and decision maker, you have to make tough decisions and stand up to powerful interests and move San Francisco forward on the best path. And there are many instances of that.
Aaron Peskin, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
After this commercial break, who the candidates say they'll be marking on their ballots for second choice. If you'd like to learn more about the other candidates running for mayor of San Francisco, watch the unedited interviews at ABC.
Our final question is one of the hardest ones because we have a ranked choice voting situation in San Francisco. Yeah. So who's going to be your second choice?
I'm watching my opponents, and they're weathering multiple scandals, pay to play in their past. We have a burgeoning scandal at City Hall with the Human Rights Commission and a direct report to this mayor. We've had corruption inside this City Hall, is not just with this mayor, but it's gone back now for years. And so I think it would be disingenuous for me to sit here and say anything other than, put me number 1. I can make it very easy for your viewers. Put Daniel Lurie number 1. And if you like somebody else and you could see them as your mayor, then you can put them 2 or 3. But I've seen these City Hall insiders, and I'm not going to sit here and say, put somebody number 2. They've kind of all made deals with each other.
Who will you be listing as your number 2? And say something nice about one of your competitors.
Listen, I've been very clear with people when asked this question. I'm not a fan of ranked choice voting, but it's the system we have, and so to win, we have to, use the system to our advantage as candidates. I'll ask everybody all the time, please vote Mark Farrell first and put me number 1 on your ballots. But I also, compared to some of my competitors, encourage people to use a second and a third choice, to use the system to make sure that we represent San Francisco well at the ballot box. I'm not prescribing who I will vote for second, who I will vote for third. The one person I've talked about very frequently is Asha Safai, who's one of my competitors in this race. We work together for a number of years. We share a lot of common values in terms of raising 2 children in the city right now, a lot of labor support for both of us and the blue-collar workers that we both grew up kind of representing. So to me, again, I think he's done a great job in the campaign, but I'm not telling anybody who to vote for second or third. Just make sure to put Mark Farrell first.
Who will you list as your number 2 on the ballot? And I would love you to be able to say something positive about that choice.
I cannot today. I'm sorry.
Oh. Really?
Listen, that's a hard one. That's a hard one, Kara, because the challenge I have. I know. I just say it's a hard one, mostly because this is not a job for. It's dangerous to have someone be considered just because they have money and they have no experience, because this is a serious job.
So Daniel Lurie.
This is
so this not is number 2.
Definitely not number anything. This is not a place for on-the-job training. Would you get on the 737 with a pilot with no experience? I mean, how do you think Captain Sully landed that plane on the Hudson? This city could have an earthquake, fire, terrorist attack, you name it, at any given moment. We don't have the luxury in a major city like San Francisco for on-the-job training. It is dangerous, it is reckless, and my plan is to continue to lead this city and build up on the success we made. And it's hard to look at most of the candidates and think that they would be anyone that I would ever want to see serve as mayor of San Francisco.
Now, Aaron Peskin has a lot of experience.
Well, look, whether it's experience or whether it's temperament, those are things that need to be taken into consideration because it does require hard decisions, and the people of San Francisco have to be your #1 priority. And that's what has happened throughout my entire duration of running this city. So,
do you really think you would leave it blank? Are you going to leave it blank?
I haven't decided yet. But I definitely know there are people that I'm definitely not putting on my ballot.
Who will be your #2 on the ballot? And since you're such a positive guy, say something positive about them.
So let me say this, which is, I ask your viewers to vote for the most experienced person in this race who is actually capable of moving San Francisco in the right direction, and I would be honored to have people's #1 vote. I encourage people to utilize all of their votes and to study all of the candidates in this race. Far be it for me to make those decisions for voters, but I will tell you this, there are certain forces in San Francisco that are encouraging voters to only vote for 2 people or only vote for 3 people. I think everybody needs to go out and do their research because ultimately that is participating in a runoff. So I encourage people to go do their research. Far be it from me to tell people how to vote.
I'm not asking you to tell other voters what to vote for. What is your #2, 3, and 4?
I'm still making that decision.
Is there anybody you've totally ruled out?
I will tell you that there are actually 8 other candidates on this ballot that people should take a look at, and I've actually gotten to know a few of them, and a few of them actually have compelling stories and compelling policies.
In-depth analysis of the candidates from our panel of journalists when we return.
So Annie and Kara, we had the 4 top candidates in the SF mayoral race, and what did we think?
Annie? Gosh, well, we started with the mayor, Mayor Breed, and she is really fighting for her job right now, and that really came out in this interview.
We have had one of the best summers that we've had since before the pandemic, with Oktoberfest, with the rave, with nightlife and activation. We are excited about getting to yes and making it possible to do some incredible things in our downtown like never before.
I think the main message that she wanted to send was that the city is trending in the right direction. Things are improving in some key areas, and she deserves another term because of that.
We, of course, have so much more work to do, and I also want to make it very clear we are well on our way.
But the question is whether people want change faster and if there's someone else that can deliver it for them. You know, overall, I was pretty impressed by all of them in different ways. They're all, in many ways, very good choices. I think the question is, you know, they each bring up, I have more experience. Daniel Lurie brought up, I have not more experience in City Hall insiderness, and that's why I'm good.
I'm running against people that have had their chance, and they have not delivered. I just want to turn around the city that I love, and 8 years from now, artists, creatives, business leaders are going to be like, I got to be in San Francisco.
So you're saying 18 to 24 months, is that what you're saying?
18 to 24 months where we get our locals saying, I want to go back into San Francisco, give me 2 terms, and everyone around the world's going to be like, San Francisco's back.
Okay, we have that on tape.
Yes.
Still, even though plenty of money's been put in this race, there's still a lot of people who, they know who the mayor is. But outside of the mayor, Mark Farrell, they have to be reminded of who he is.
You know, when I was on the Board of Supervisors, when I became mayor, we had nothing was perfect, but we had active working relationships inside of City Hall, even with people that I disagreed with 95% of the time. My priority will be focusing on public safety, cleaning up our streets, and then being the most proactive mayor in our city's history, marketing our city to the business community, to the tourist community.
So what do we think about Aaron Peskin? Anything stand out from that conversation?
Happier than I thought. I just, you know, I think his public image is really grumpy, kind of, and I don't mean to say that in a diminishing.
No, you're just saying what people think.
Yes, I think they do. The unfavorables are high, but he seemed very positive, and I think his big hill is he business friendly, because this is going to be a business. Businesses are going to be part of bringing San Francisco back, which is why he is, as you noted, the only progressive here.
Our mayor keeps saying that compassion is killing us. It's not compassion that's killing us, it's corruption that's killing us. And a progressive value is exposing that corruption. And I am the member, I am the only candidate in this race who has a plan for that, and it's Prop C on this November's ballot.
I didn't feel like I got all my questions answered, but
More
I
than
think
usual, maybe?
maybe more than we would have had time for in a debate, so that's good. But,
Right, 'cause we don't get to answer questions in a debate. I think
Right.
debates are so performative at this point, and sometimes they're entertaining, like Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That was highly entertaining and it showed a lot of what was going on there. But I think voters need to hear more. I think hearing more is really important for voters, and they always talk about that, and I think they do want that. I think we disrespect voters in a lot of ways. They don't want just people attacking each other. We want to hear, what are you going to do?
Watch the unedited interviews at abc7news.com/sfmayor.